Listen to me very carefully. You need to leave. Now, before he finds out you know where she is. I'm not going anywhere. She's just a child. She's scared and hungry. You don't understand what you're dealing with. That little girl, the one you're trying to help. Her father is Kwon Dae-Jung. Do you know what that name means in this city? I don't care who her father is. I care that she's 5 years old and crying in the rain. Then God help you. Because when he shows up, and he will show up, your life will never be the same again. The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday evening in Seattle, the kind of rain that soaks through your jacket in seconds and turns the streets into rivers of neon reflections. Amara Kimathi was exhausted, 25 years old, working 2 jobs and still barely making rent. Her shift at the graphic design firm had run late. Again. Now she was rushing to her second job at Mom and Jerry's restaurant, her sneakers splashing through puddles, her cheap umbrella doing absolutely nothing against the wind. That's when she heard it, a sound that cut through the noise of traffic and rain. A child crying, not just crying sobbing, the kind of desperate, terrified crying that makes your heart stop. Amara froze on the sidewalk outside the 7-Eleven on Pike Street. There, huddled against the brick wall next to the entrance, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her clothes were expensive, designer probably. A silk dress that was now soaked through. Custom leather shoes that cost more than Amara made in a month. Diamond earrings that caught the streetlight. But none of that mattered, because this little girl was alone, terrified, and sobbing like her world had ended. Have you ever seen someone in trouble and known deep in your bones that you couldn't just walk away? Even when every logical part of your brain is screaming that this isn't your problem, that you're already late for work, that you have your own struggles, but something in your chest just cracks open and suddenly nothing else matters except helping. That's what happened to Amara. She crouched down in front of the little girl, her knees hitting the wet pavement. Hey, sweetheart, are you okay? Where's your mom? The child looked up, her face streaked with tears and rain. She said something in a language Amara didn't understand. Korean, maybe. The words were frantic, tumbling over each other. But even without translation, the meaning was clear. Lost, alone, scared. Amara looked around the busy street, searching for frantic parents. For someone, anyone, looking for this child. But the sidewalks were full of people hurrying past, heads down against the rain, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the small tragedy unfolding right beside them. Okay, okay. It's going to be okay. Amara's voice was soft, the same tone her mother had used when Amara was young and scared. Let me help you, okay? The little girl just cried harder. Amara should have called the police right then. That was the smart thing, the logical thing. Let the authorities handle it. But this child was shaking. Her lips were turning blue, and her stomach, Amara noticed, was making loud, growling sounds even over the rain. She was hungry. This tiny, terrified, lost little girl was hungry. And Amara, who'd grown up with a mother who fed every hungry person who came to their door back in Nairobi, who'd been raised to believe that feeding people was how you showed love, made a decision. Come with me, sweetie. Let's get you somewhere warm. Let's get you some food, okay? She held out her hand. The little girl stared at it for a long moment. Then, with a trust that made Amara's throat tight, she placed her small hand in Amara's larger one. The walk to Mom and Jerry's restaurant was only 2 blocks, but it felt like miles. Amara kept looking around, expecting someone to appear, expecting police cars or frantic parents or something, but nothing, but rain and indifferent crowds, and this small hand gripping hers like a lifeline. Mom and Jerry's restaurant was a small Kenyan place tucked between a pawn shop and a laundromat. The kind of restaurant that survived on word of mouth and the loyalty of immigrants who were desperate for a taste of home. The bell chimed as Amara pushed open the door, and immediately the smell of Burberry spices and injera wrapped around them like a hug. Yena. Mom and Jerry looked up from behind the counter, her weathered face creasing with concern. Your shift doesn't start for 20 minutes. And who is this? I found her outside. She's lost. Amara guided the little girl toward the back of the restaurant, toward the small employee area where Mom and Jerry kept a table and chairs. She's scared and she's hungry. Can I feed her? Please. Mom and Jerry's expression softened immediately. She had 6 children of her own back in Kenya, being raised by her sister while she worked to send money home. She understood exactly what it meant to see a child in need. Of course, feed her. Poor thing. Amara settled the little girl into a chair and hurried to the kitchen. What do you feed a scared 5-year-old who doesn't speak your language? She decided on something simple. Sukuma wiki, the collard greens cooked with tomatoes and onions. Ugali, the cornmeal staple that was filling and mild. A little bit of stewed chicken, not too spicy. She brought the plate back to find the little girl sitting exactly where she'd left her, still shaking, tears still streaming down her face. But when she saw the food, something shifted in her expression. Hunger won out over fear, at least for a moment. Here, sweetheart, Amara demonstrated, tearing off a piece of ugali and using it to scoop up the greens. Like this. See? The little girl watched carefully. Then, mimicking Amara's movements, she tore off her own piece of ugali, scooped up some greens, put it in her mouth. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since Amara had found her, the crying stopped. Good? Amara asked softly. The little girl nodded, and then she was eating like she was starving, like she hadn't eaten in days. Though judging by those expensive clothes, that probably wasn't true. Fear could make you hungry. Trauma could make you desperate for comfort. And food, Amara had learned, was one of the most basic comforts humans had. She pulled out her phone, opening Google Translate. It took a few tries to get the language right, but eventually she had Korean to English pulled up. She typed carefully. What is your name? She showed the phone to the little girl, who was still eating but slower now, her desperate hunger easing into something more manageable. The girl looked at the screen, then, in careful English, she said, Jiwoo. Jiwoo. Amara smiled. That's a beautiful name. I'm Amara. Amara. Jiwoo repeated it carefully, her accent making it sound musical. Amara. Over the next 20 minutes, through a combination of Google Translate, hand gestures, and the universal language of kindness, Amara learned a few things. Jiwoo was 5 years old. She'd gotten separated from someone. She was scared, and she thought the food was good, which she communicated by smiling for the first time and pointing at the plate saying, good, good. That smile hit Amara like a punch to the chest. This little girl, who'd been sobbing in the rain 10 minutes ago, was smiling. Her face was still tear-stained. Her clothes were still wet, but she was smiling. Amara should call someone now. She knew that. The police, child services, someone official. But Jiwoo had finally stopped shaking, had finally stopped crying. And Amara didn't want to scare her again. Just a few more minutes, she told herself. Just until she finishes eating, then I'll call someone. Those few more minutes changed everything, because that's when the SUVs pulled up outside. Amara noticed them through the restaurant's front window. 3 black SUVs, expensive looking, with tinted windows so dark you couldn't see inside. They pulled up to the curb in perfect synchronization, and something about the way they moved made the hair on the back of Amara's neck stand up. Mom and Jerry saw them too. Her face went pale. She'd lived in Seattle long enough to recognize what those vehicles meant. Child. What have you brought into my restaurant? Before Amara could answer, men in black suits were emerging from the SUVs, not getting out, emerging like they were one organism moving in perfect coordination. They spread out around the block with military precision, taking positions at each corner, each entrance, each possible exit. And then the back door of the middle SUV opened. The man who stepped out made everything else fade into background noise. He was tall, probably 6 feet, with the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, perfect bone structure, black hair styled precisely. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Amara's car, and he moved with the kind of controlled grace that came from years of training. But it was his eyes that Amara noticed most. Even from across the street, even through the rain-streaked window, she could see them. Dark, intense, absolutely cold. This was a dangerous man. Every instinct Amara had was screaming that at her. He said something to one of the men beside him. The man nodded and pointed toward Mom and Jerry's restaurant. And then the dangerous man's eyes locked onto the window, locked onto the restaurant, locked somehow onto exactly where Amara and Jiwoo were sitting. Oh no. Amara's heart was hammering now. Oh no, oh no, oh no. The restaurant door opened, the bell chimed, cheerful and incongruous with the tension that suddenly filled the small space. Two of the suited men entered first, scanning the restaurant with professional thoroughness. Then they stepped aside, and the dangerous man walked in. Time seemed to slow down. Amara watched him scan the restaurant, his eyes moving methodically from the counter to the tables to the back area where she sat with Jiwoo. The moment his eyes landed on the little girl, everything about him changed. The cold mask shattered. His face transformed from ice to something Amara didn't have words for. Relief, joy, fear, love, all of it hitting at once. Appa! Jiwoo's shriek was so loud it made Amara jump. The little girl launched herself out of her chair and ran, her small legs pumping, her arms outstretched. The dangerous man dropped to his knees right there on the restaurant floor, his expensive suit hitting the wet tiles, and caught his daughter. He wrapped his arms around her and held her so tight. Amara was worried he might hurt her. But Jiwoo was holding him just as tightly, her small arms around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder. He was speaking rapidly in Korean, his hands running over Jiwoo's hair, her face, her arms, checking for injuries. His voice was shaking. This dangerous man with the cold eyes and the military precision was shaking as he held his daughter. And Amara realized with a clarity that cut through her fear that she wasn't looking at a monster. She was looking at a terrified father who'd just found his lost child. But that didn't make him any less dangerous. One of the suited men, an older guy with a scar on his jaw, approached them. He said something in Korean, his tone respectful. The dangerous man responded without looking away from his daughter, his hands still checking her over and over, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Then Jiwoo pulled back from the hug. She was chattering now, rapid Korean with a few English words mixed in. And she was pointing directly at Amara. The dangerous man's eyes followed the gesture. And for the second time that evening, Amara felt his full attention land on her. But this time, she was close enough to see the calculation happening behind those eyes, the assessment, the threat evaluation. She was being judged, and she had no idea if she was about to pass or fail. He stood slowly, lifting Jiwoo with him, settling her on his hip like she weighed nothing. Then he walked toward Amara's table. Each step was deliberate, controlled, predatory. Amara stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. She was 5'6". He was easily 6 feet. The height difference had never felt more significant. He stopped a few feet away. Up close, he was even more imposing, not just handsome, beautiful in a way that was almost intimidating. But it was the intelligence in his eyes that really made Amara nervous. This was a man who missed nothing. His English was perfect, barely accented. Explain. Amara's mouth was dry. I found her outside, on Pike Street by the 7-Eleven. She was crying. She was alone. She was scared. His jaw tightened. And you brought her here instead of calling the police because she was hungry. The words came out sharper than Amara intended, because she was shaking and cold and terrified, and I wasn't going to leave a 5-year-old standing in the rain while I waited for authorities to show up. Something flickered in his expression. Not anger exactly, something more complicated. Ji-woo chose that moment to speak up, tugging on her father's collar and pointing at the plate of food still on the table. She said something in Korean, her tone enthusiastic, her small hands gesturing at the ugali and sukuma wiki. The scared man beside him, the one with the scar, translated quietly. She says the woman fed her, that the food was good, that she was kind and made her feel safe. The dangerous man's eyes never left Amara's face. He was looking at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle, like she didn't fit into any category he had for people. What's your name? He asked. Amara Kimathi. Miss Kimathi. He shifted Jiwoo slightly on his hip. My daughter has been missing for 3 hours. 3 hours. Do you understand what that means? Amara shook her head. It means I have been losing my mind. It means I have had every person in my organization searching this city. It means I have been imagining every terrible thing that could happen to her. His voice was still controlled, but Amara could hear the edge in it now, the barely contained emotion. And you had her here, in this restaurant, for how long? 20 minutes, maybe 30. And you didn't call anyone, didn't report finding a lost child, didn't think that maybe somewhere, someone was looking for her. Amara felt her own temper flare, cutting through the fear. I was going to call, but she was crying and scared and hungry, and I thought maybe, just maybe, making sure she felt safe for 5 minutes was more important than following protocol. The dangerous man stared at her. Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached into his jacket. Amara's heart stopped. Was he reaching for a gun? Was this how it ended? But he pulled out a wallet, expensive leather. He opened it and extracted a stack of bills, $100 bills, 10 of them. He placed them on the table, for the food and for your silence. Amara looked at the money, then back at him. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, not everyone. She pushed the bills back toward him. I didn't help your daughter because I expected payment. I helped her because she needed help. That's what decent people do. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the sounds of the kitchen seemed to fade. The dangerous man was staring at Amara like she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. Ji-woo, oblivious to the tension, wiggled in her father's arms. She reached toward Amara, her small hands grasping. Amara! The little girl wanted to go to her, wanted Amara to hold her. And her father's expression as he watched this, as he saw his daughter reaching for a stranger, was something Amara couldn't quite read. He set Jiwoo down carefully. The little girl immediately ran to Amara and wrapped her arms around Amara's legs in a fierce hug. Then she looked up, her face split in a smile, and said in careful English, "Thank you, Amara. Thank you." Amara's heart cracked open. She crouched down and hugged the little girl properly. You're welcome, sweetheart. You stay close to your appa now, okay? Don't wander off. Jiwoo nodded seriously. Then she surprised Amara by kissing her cheek before running back to her father. The dangerous man picked up his daughter again, but his eyes never left Amara. You told her your name. She was scared. I was trying to make her feel safe. Amara straightened up. Is that a problem? It's unexpected. He paused. Most people who encounter my daughter, who realize who she belongs to, they want something, money, favors, protection. But you refused payment. I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to help a scared little girl. That's it. He studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a business card. Simple, elegant. Just a name, Kwon Dae-Jung, and a phone number. If anyone asks about today, you saw nothing, you know nothing. It wasn't a request, it was an order. Amara took the card. Sure, I saw nothing. He nodded once. Then he turned and walked toward the door, his men falling into formation around him. But at the door, he paused, looked back over his shoulder. Jiwoo was waving enthusiastically at Amara over his shoulder, her small hand opening and closing. Miss Kamathi. His voice cut through the restaurant. For what it's worth, thank you, for your kindness. And then they were gone. The bell chimed, the SUVs pulled away, and Amara was left standing in the middle of Mom and Jerry's restaurant, holding a business card, her hands shaking with adrenaline crash. Mom and Jerry emerged from where she'd been hiding in the kitchen. Her face was pale. Yena. Do you know who that was? A father looking for his daughter? That was Kwon Dae-Jung. She said the name like it should mean something. He's Korean Mafia child. Very powerful, very dangerous. People who cross him disappear. People who help him end up in debt they can never repay. I didn't help him. I helped his daughter. Amara looked down at the business card in her hand. There's a difference. To men like that, there is no difference. Mom and Jerry gripped Amara's shoulders. Listen to me. Forget this happened. Throw away that card. Don't answer if he calls. Stay far, far away from that family. Amara nodded, but she didn't throw away the card. She tucked it into her pocket and tried to ignore the way her heart was still racing. That should have been the end of it. One strange encounter with a lost child and her dangerous father. A story to tell friends over drinks. Nothing more. But 4 days later, the flowers arrived. Amara was working her shift at Mom and Jerry's when the delivery guy showed up with an arrangement so massive he could barely carry it. Orchids and roses and flowers Amara didn't even have names for, arranged in a crystal vase that probably cost more than her rent. The card was simple. Thank you for your kindness, KDJ. Oh no! Mom and Jerry's eyes were wide. Oh no, 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 he's remembered you. It's just flowers. Amara tried to sound calm, but her heart was doing that racing thing again. It's a thank you gift, that's all. That is not all. Mom and Jerry pointed at the arrangement. That is a man making a statement. That is a man who doesn't forget. She was right, because 3 days after the flowers, the man in the suit showed up. Amara was wiping down tables after the lunch rush when the bell chimed. She looked up and recognized him immediately. The scared man from before, the one who'd been translating for Dae-Jung. He walked directly to her table and held out an envelope. Expensive paper. Heavy. Miss Kimathi. Mr. Kwon would like to extend an invitation. Tonight, 8 p.m. He handed her a card with an address in Bellevue, one of the expensive high-rises overlooking Lake Washington. And if I don't want to come? Amara asked. The man's expression didn't change. It would be unwise to decline Mr. Kwon's invitation. That's not ominous at all. He will be expecting you. 8 p.m. Please don't be late. And then he was gone, leaving Amara holding an invitation that felt more like a summons. She should ignore it, should throw the card away like Mom and Jerry had told her to do with the business card, should forget the whole thing. Instead, at 7:30, she found herself texting her best friend Zara. Going to address in Bellevue, high-rise. Here's the location. If I don't check in by 10 p.m., call the police. Zara's response was immediate. Girl, what are you doing? Amara didn't have a good answer, so she just wrote back, I'll explain later. Just promise you'll call if you don't hear from me. Promise, but you're insane. Yeah, Amara looked at herself in her apartment's bathroom mirror. She was wearing her nicest jeans and a sweater that didn't have any holes. Not exactly high rise penthouse attire, but it was the best she had. Yeah, I probably am. The Bellevue address turned out to be one of the most expensive buildings in the city, the kind of place with a doorman and marble floors, and the scent of money in the air. The doorman took one look at Amara, clearly clocking her cheap clothes and secondhand purse. But when she gave her name, his expression shifted to professional courtesy. Miss Kimathi. Yes, Mr. Kwon is expecting you. The elevator to the penthouse is this way. Of course it was the penthouse. Where else would a dangerous Korean crime boss live? The elevator was the fancy kind, with mirrors on all sides and smooth jazz playing softly. Amara watched the floor numbers climb 20, 30, 40. Her reflection multiplied into infinity around her. A Kenyan girl in a cheap sweater, heading into a world she had no business being in. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no neighbors, just straight into the most beautiful apartment Amara had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Washington and the Seattle skyline. The furniture was minimalist and expensive. Modern art on the walls that was probably worth more than Amara would make in her entire lifetime. Everything was clean lines and muted colors and quiet wealth. And running toward her with a shriek of joy was Jiwoo. Amara! The little girl crashed into Amara's legs, hugging her tight. You came! You came! Appa said you might not come, but you came. Amara's heart did that cracking thing again. Hey, sweetheart. She crouched down to Jiwoo's level. Of course I came. How are you? Good. Look. Jiwoo grabbed her hand and pulled her into the apartment. I drawed you a picture. Come see. She was dragged past the living room, past the dining area, to a small table covered in crayons and paper. And there, in the enthusiastic scribbles of a 5-year-old, was a drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall with black, scribbles for hair, one small with a dress, and between them, something that might have been a plate of food. This is you, Jiwoo pointed at the tall figure, and this is me, and this is the food you gave me. Is it good? It's beautiful. And Amara meant it. This drawing, this simple childish drawing, was one of the most touching things she'd ever received. That's when she felt him. That presence that made all the air in the room shift. She looked up, and there he was, Kwon Dae-Jung, standing in the entrance to what looked like a home office. He was wearing dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were more muscular than his suits had suggested. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked more human than he had in the restaurant, but no less dangerous. Miss Kimathi. His voice was neutral. Thank you for coming. Amara stood up slowly. Did I have a choice? Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. There's always a choice, but I'm glad you made this one. Please sit. He gestured to the living area. The furniture looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Amara sat carefully on the edge of a couch that probably cost more than her car, very aware that her jeans had a small stain on one knee from work. Dae-Jung sat across from her. Jiwoo immediately climbed into his lap, settling there like it was her throne. He wrapped one arm around her automatically, and Amara noticed the way his entire posture softened with his daughter in his arms. I suppose you're wondering why I asked you here, he said. The thought had crossed my mind. Jiwoo has talked about nothing but you for 4 days. He looked down at his daughter with an expression that was pure love, about the kind lady who gave her food, who made her feel safe, who has a pretty name. I'm glad she's okay. Amara meant it. I was worried about her. As was I. His jaw tightened slightly. The men who were supposed to be watching her, they were attacked. She was taken. It was an attempted kidnapping. He paused. She escaped and ran. Which is how you found her. Amara's blood went cold. Someone tried to kidnap her, someone who wanted to hurt me through her. His voice went flat. They failed. They will not get another opportunity. The threat in those words was unmistakable. Amara didn't want to know what happened to the people who'd tried to take Jiwoo. Why am I here, Mr. Kwon? He was quiet for a moment, then he said, since that night, Jiwoo has been having nightmares, waking up crying, scared. But when she talks about you, she calms down. You represent safety to her, kindness in the middle of trauma. So you wanted to thank me in person. Amara got ready to stand. That's very kind, but unnecessary. That's not why you're here. He shifted Jiwoo slightly in his lap. I want to hire you. Amara froze. I'm sorry, what? To spend time with Jiwoo, be her companion, help her with English. Be someone she can trust. You want to hire me to be friends with your daughter? In essence, yes. His eyes were serious. Jiwoo needs stability, needs trusted people in her life, especially after what happened. And she's already chosen you. Amara looked at Jiwoo, who was watching them both with bright, hopeful eyes. Mr. Kwon, I appreciate the offer, but I don't take money to be someone's friend. That's not how friendship works. Everyone has a price, Miss Kamathi. Not everyone. She held his gaze. If I spend time with Jiwoo, it'll be because I want to, because I care about her, not because you're paying me. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You need money. I've investigated your situation. You work 2 jobs. You're supporting your mother in Nairobi with her medical expenses. You have student loans. You live in a studio apartment with broken locks that should have been fixed 6 months ago. Amara's face went hot. That's incredibly invasive. That's careful. His tone didn't change. My daughter's safety requires that I know exactly who's in her life. Every detail, every connection, every vulnerability. So you know I'm broke and desperate, and you think that makes me easy to buy. I think it makes you practical. Most people are. His head tilted slightly. But you've refused money twice now, which makes you either incredibly principled or incredibly foolish. Maybe both. Amara crossed her arms. Look, I get it. You're used to controlling everything and everyone around you, but I'm not for sale. If I visit Jiwoo, it's as her friend, not your employee. The silence stretched between them. Jiwoo looked between them, sensing the tension, her little face scrunching in confusion. Finally, Dae-Jung spoke. Why would you do that? Spend time with a child you barely know, with no compensation, while working 2 jobs and struggling to pay bills. Because she's a sweet kid who's been through trauma. Because she smiled at me when I gave her food. Because maybe, just maybe, I'm the kind of person who helps people without expecting something in return. Amara stood up. Is that really so hard to believe? In my world? Yes. He stood as well, and suddenly they were standing much too close in the expensive living room. In my world, everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. Everyone is looking for leverage. Then your world sounds exhausting. I'm sorry you've never met anyone who helped you just to be kind. Something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable that was gone so fast Amara almost thought she'd imagined it. Jiwoo chose that moment to tug on her father's shirt. Appa, she said in her careful English, can Amara stay, please? Dae-Jung looked down at his daughter, then back at Amara. He seemed to be waging some internal battle. Finally, he said, if you won't accept payment, then we'll call it what it is. Friendship. You'll visit Jiwoo twice a week, spend time with her, and in return, I'll ensure your safety. My safety? You're now connected to my daughter, which means you're connected to me. Anyone who knows that will either try to use you for information or hurt you to hurt me. So whether you like it or not, you're under my protection now. That sounds ominous. That's reality. His eyes were serious. Welcome to my world, Miss Kamathi. I hope you don't regret entering it. Amara looked at Jiwoo's hopeful face, at this little girl who'd been through so much and was looking at Amara like she was something precious. And she thought about the drawing with the two stick figures and the plate of food. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, I'll visit. Twice a week to start, as friends. Jiwoo's shriek of joy was loud enough to make them both wince. She launched herself at Amara, who caught her automatically and wrapped her small arms around Amara's neck. Thank you, Amma, she said, using a shortened version of Amara's name. Thank you. Over Jiwoo's head, Amara's eyes met. Dae-Jung's. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read, but there was something there, something that made her pulse quicken. Welcome to our lives, he said quietly. And Amara knew with absolute certainty that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't begin to predict. The first visit was awkward. Amara showed up at the penthouse on a Wednesday evening, still wearing her work clothes from the design firm, and found Jiwoo waiting by the elevator with barely contained excitement. The little girl grabbed her hand immediately and dragged her to the play area that had been set up in one corner of the massive living room. They sat on the floor with picture books, Jiwoo pointing at images while Amara said the English words slowly and clearly. Cat, dog, house, tree. Jiwoo repeated each one with serious concentration, her little face scrunched up as she tried to get the pronunciation exactly right. Dae-Jung was there, but he stayed in the doorway to his office, watching, always watching. Amara could feel his eyes on them the entire time. It should have made her uncomfortable. Instead, it made her hyper-aware of every movement, every word, every breath. The second visit was easier. Jiwoo opened up, chattering in a mix of Korean and English about her day, about her toys, about everything and nothing. And then, while they were coloring, she said something that made Amara's heart hurt. I miss my Amma. Jiwoo's voice was small. She drawed with me, like you. Amara set down her crayon. I'm sure she did, sweetheart. I'm sure she loved drawing with you. Do you have an Iama? I do. She's far away in Kenya. But I talked to her on the phone. I can't talk to my Iama on the phone. Jiwoo's eyes filled with tears. She went to heaven. Appa said she's watching me, but I can't see her. Oh, sweetheart. Amara pulled the little girl into her lap, holding her while she cried. I'm so sorry. Do you think she's really watching? I think if she loved you, then yes, she's definitely watching. And I think she's probably so proud of how brave you are. Jiwoo cried into Amara's shoulder for a few minutes. And when she pulled back, she said, I'm glad you're here, Amma. You make me feel not so lonely. Amara had to blink back her own tears. I'm glad I'm here too. She looked up to find Dae-Jung standing in the office doorway. His expression was complicated, grateful and pained, and something else she couldn't name. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them felt charged with understanding. Two people trying to help a little girl heal from loss. By the third visit, Amara brought mandazi, the Kenyan fried dough that her mother used to make for special occasions. Jiwoo's eyes went huge when she tried one, and she immediately declared it the best thing she'd ever eaten, which was probably an exaggeration, but it made Amara laugh. Try one. Amara held out the container to Dae-Jung, who had actually joined them at the table this time instead of hovering in doorways. He took one hesitantly, like he wasn't sure what to expect. Bit into it, his eyebrows rose in surprise. This is good. You sound shocked. I am. He took another bite. What's in this? Cardamom, coconut, a lot of sugar. Amara smiled. My mother's recipe. She used to make them every Sunday after church. Your mother is a good cook, the best. Amara's voice went soft. I learned everything from her. How to cook, how to be kind, how to see the good in people even when the world is hard. Dae-Jung was looking at her with that intense focus again. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She is. She's the reason I'm here in Seattle. She sacrificed everything to send me to university, worked 3 jobs back in Nairobi so I could have an education, and now she's sick and I'm working 2 jobs to send money back for her treatment, and I just hope it's enough. The words tumbled out before Amara could stop them. She never talked about this, about the guilt and the fear and the desperate hope that her mother would be okay. What's wrong with her? Dae-Jung asked quietly. Chronic kidney disease. She needs dialysis twice a week. The treatments are expensive. Amara looked down at her hands. I send what I can, but it's never quite enough. She looked up to find him watching her with an expression that was almost gentle. What? She asked. Nothing, just understanding you better. Why you work so hard. Why you help people even when it costs you. It's what she taught me. Help where you can. Be kind when the world is cruel. Make things a little bit better for someone else. That's a beautiful way to live. It's the only way I know how. Something passed between them in that moment. Some recognition, some connection. Amara felt it in her chest, warm and terrifying. Jiwoo broke the moment by demanding another mandazi and asking if Amara could teach her how to count in Swahili. The rest of the visit was spent teaching a 5-year-old to say moja, mbili, tattoo, while Dae-Jung sat at the table and watched them with an expression Amara was starting to recognize. Contentment. Like this, right here, was exactly where he wanted to be. By the 4th visit, Jiwoo asked if Amara could come 3 times a week instead of 2. And when Amara looked at Dae-Jung for permission, she found him already nodding. If you have time, he said, we would both like that. We, not Jiwoo, we, as in both of them wanted her there more often. Amara said yes. The visits became the best part of her week. She'd leave her design job, stop by her apartment to change, and head to Bellevue. Each time, Jiwoo would be waiting. And each time, Dae-Jung would be there too, participating more and more, reading stories with them, playing games, cooking dinner while Amara and Jiwoo set the table. It felt dangerously like family, like something Amara hadn't even known she was missing until it was right there in front of her. And then 6 weeks after that first, 6 weeks after visit, everything changed. Amara was leaving the penthouse after an evening with Jiwoo. It was late, almost 9, because they'd gotten caught up in a Disney movie marathon that Jiwoo had insisted Amara had to see. Dae-Jung's driver was supposed to pick her up, something Dae-Jung had insisted on after the first week of visits. Your car is a liability, he'd said flatly. The Honda is 20 years old and has a broken taillight. You'll use my driver or you won't come. Amara had argued, but he'd been immovable. So now she had a driver, which was both embarrassing and oddly nice. She was waiting in the building's parking garage when she heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, not the driver's usual quick pace. She turned and found a man walking toward her. He was big, muscular, with a scar running down the side of his face, and the way he was looking at her made every instinct scream danger. You're the woman who spends time with Kwon's daughter. It wasn't a question. Amara backed up, her hand fumbling for her phone. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie. We've been watching. His smile was ugly. Tell Kwon that Park sends his regards. Tell him his daughter isn't safe. Tell him, he pulled out a knife, that nothing he loves is safe. The knife blade caught the fluorescent light. Amara's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She opened her mouth to scream, but before she could make a sound, someone appeared behind the man. Yoon, the scared man who'd brought her the invitation all those weeks ago. He moved with a speed that didn't seem human. One moment he was across the garage. The next, he was disarming the knife-wielding man with brutal efficiency. The knife clattered to the concrete. The man's arm was bent at an unnatural angle, and then 2 more guards materialized from nowhere. grabbing the man and dragging him toward a service exit. It all happened in maybe 10 seconds. Yoon turned to Amara, his expression calm, like he hadn't just stopped a violent attack. Inside, now. Amara's legs were shaking so badly she could barely walk. Yoon guided her to the elevator with a hand on her elbow, professional but firm. In the elevator, riding back up to the penthouse, Amara's hands wouldn't stop trembling. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice was shaking. "I'm fine." Yoon didn't respond, just kept his eyes forward until the elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Dae-Jung was in the living room on his phone, barking orders in rapid Korean. The moment he saw Amara, he stopped mid-sentence, said something sharp into the phone, and hung up. "Are you hurt?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands hovering near her shoulders like he wanted to touch, but wasn't sure if he should. "I'm fine, just shaken up." "What happened?" His eyes moved to Yoon. Yoon gave a brief report in Korean. Amara caught the name Park, recognized the tone of professional assessment. Dae-Jung's expression went from concerned to absolutely murderous. He started pacing, pulling his phone back out, making call after call. His voice was cold and controlled, but Amara could see the fury in every line of his body. This was the dangerous man from the restaurant. This was what he looked like when someone threatened what was his. After the 3rd call, he turned back to Amara. "Sit, please." She sat on the couch, mostly because her legs were still shaking. Dae-Jung sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I'm sorry." His voice was tight. "This is my fault. I brought you into my world. I made you a target. I chose to be here. You didn't choose this. The threats, the danger, men with knives in parking garages." His jaw was clenched so hard, Amara was worried he'd crack a tooth. "Park is a rival. He's been trying to hurt me for years. First Jiwoo, now you. What happened to the man? You don't want to know." And she didn't. Some part of her absolutely didn't want to know what happened to people who threatened Kwon Dae-Jung's family. "But I'm choosing to stay," she said quietly. The words surprised even her. "Despite what just happened, I'm choosing this." He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Why?" "Because Jiwoo needs me. Because I care about her." Amara paused. "Because I care about both of you." The air went electric. Dae-Jung was staring at her with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight. "Both of us." "Yeah." Amara swallowed. "Both of you. Is that a problem? It's dangerous." His voice was rough. "I'm dangerous. My world, my life, everything about me is dangerous. You should run as far from me as possible." "But I'm not running." "Then you're either very brave or very stupid." "Maybe both." She managed a shaky smile. "But I'm still here." Dae-Jung stood abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "If you're staying, then we need to do this right. You need to be able to protect yourself." "I can protect myself. Can you disarm a man with a knife?" "Well, no, but can you break a hold if someone grabs you? Can you throw someone twice your size? Can you recognize when you're being followed?" Amara was quiet. "Starting tomorrow, you train with me. 6 in the morning, 3 times a week. I'll teach you self-defense, how to be aware, how to survive." His eyes met hers. "Non-negotiable if you want to keep seeing Jiwoo. I have a job. I can't just..." "Before work." He was already pulling out his phone. "What time does your shift start?" 9. "Then we train at 6. 3 hours is enough time for basic training and for you to get ready." His tone left no room for argument. "You don't get to be in Jiwoo's life without knowing how to protect yourself." Amara wanted to argue, wanted to say this was ridiculous, but the memory of that knife was still vivid in her mind. "Okay, fine, but I'm not quitting my job, and you're not paying me for training. Wouldn't dream of it." There was something that might have been amusement in his eyes. "You're far too stubborn to accept money." Glad we understand each other. The next morning at 6 sharp, Amara showed up at the penthouse in workout clothes she'd borrowed from Zara. The living room furniture had been pushed aside, and there were training mats on the floor. Dae-Jung was already there, wearing track pants and a fitted t-shirt that showed exactly how muscular he was under those expensive suits. Amara tried very hard not to stare. We'll start with basics. He gestured for her to step onto the mat. Awareness, stance, how to fall without hurting yourself. The first session was brutal. Dae-Jung was a patient teacher, but he was thorough. He showed her how to stand with her weight balanced, ready to move in any direction, how to fall and roll without breaking bones, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. And it required touching, a lot of touching. His hands on her hips, repositioning her stance. His body pressed against her back, showing her the angle of a defensive move. His breath warm on her neck as he murmured corrections. You're too tense. His hands were on her waist, adjusting her position. You need to stay loose until the moment of contact, then explode. Easy for you to say, you're not the one being thrown around. Want to try throwing me? Amara looked at him skeptically. He was 6 feet of trained muscle. She was 5'6", and her most strenuous exercise was walking up the stairs to her apartment. That seems unlikely to end well for me. Try. Use what I showed you, his weight, not yours. His momentum against him. She tried, and somehow, probably because he let her, she actually managed to flip him onto the mat. He landed with a thud that shook the floor. Not bad. He looked up at her from the mat, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Pride, warmth, something that looked almost like desire. Again. By the second week of training, they'd developed a rhythm. Amara would arrive at 6. They'd train for 2 hours, then she'd shower in the guest bathroom while Dae-Jung made coffee. They'd have breakfast together, these quiet morning moments before Ji-woo woke up, talking about nothing and everything. She learned things about him in those early morning conversations, that he'd never wanted to run the family business, that his father had died when he was 22, leaving him no choice but to take over, that the marriage to Ji-woo's mother had been arranged by their families, a business alliance that became a friendship but never love. Haejin was a good person. Dae-Jung stared into his coffee. We weren't in love, but we cared about each other. When she got sick, when she knew she was dying, she made me promise something. What? Amara asked softly. That I'd make sure Ji-woo knew love, real love, not just duty or obligation. She said Ji-woo deserved to grow up seeing what it looked like when someone chose to stay, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. His eyes met Amara's across the kitchen table. I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but I think I'm starting to. The air between them felt heavy, charged. Amara's pulse was doing that racing thing it did whenever he looked at her like that. By the 3rd week of training, Amara could actually hold her own in sparring. She'd learned to read his movements, anticipate his attacks. They'd circle each other on the mat, and there was something almost like dancing to it. The way they moved together, the way they anticipated each other. You're getting good at this. Dae-Jung circled her, looking for an opening. I'm almost impressed. Almost? Don't get cocky. He moved fast, going for a hold, but Amara twisted away using the technique he'd taught her. He smiled. Okay, now I'm impressed. They were both breathing hard, both sweating, standing close enough that Amara could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. The moment stretched. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. Then Jiwoo's voice called from upstairs. Appa, is Amma here? The spell broke. Dae-Jung stepped back, clearing his throat. She's awake early. I should go shower. Amara practically fled to the guest bathroom, her heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with the workout. The visits increased to 4 times a week, then 5. Amara was spending more time at the penthouse than at her own apartment. She had clothes in the guest room closet now, toiletries in the bathroom, her favorite tea in the kitchen. It felt like living there, like being part of their life in a way that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. They started cooking together, Dae-Jung teaching her Korean dishes while she taught him Kenyan recipes. They'd work side by side in the kitchen while Jiwoo sat at the counter doing homework. And it felt so domestic that Amara sometimes forgot this wasn't actually her family. But then Dae-Jung would look at her across the kitchen, his eyes soft and warm, and she'd remember that maybe, possibly it could be. One evening, after Jiwoo had gone to bed, Dae-Jung poured 2 glasses of wine and joined Amara on the balcony. The Seattle skyline glittered below them, lights reflecting off the lake. Why graphic design? He asked. If you could do anything, what would you choose? Fine art. Amara didn't even have to think about it. Large-scale paintings. I'd tell stories about immigrants, about the struggle and beauty of building a life in a new country, about the way we carry our cultures with us while adapting to new ones. Why don't you? Because fine art doesn't pay bills, doesn't cover my rent or my mother's medical expenses or my student loans. So I do graphic design for tech companies and restaurants, and I paint in my head. If money wasn't an issue, Dae-Jung said carefully, what would you create? Amara described her dream, a series of massive canvases, each one telling the story of a different immigrant family. The colors of their home countries bleeding into the grays of American cities, the way cultures blended and clashed and created something new, the joy and pain and hope of it all. You light up when you talk about it. Dae-Jung was watching her with that focused intensity. Your whole face changes. You should paint, Amara, really paint, not just dream about it. It's just a dream. Dreams matter. He set down his wine glass and moved closer. Don't let anyone tell you they don't. Don't let circumstances kill the things that make you who you are. They were standing close now, too close. Amara could feel the warmth radiating off him, could smell his cologne mixed with something that was just him. Amara. His voice was rough. I need to tell you something. Her heart was hammering. Okay, these months with you, they've changed everything. The way Jiwoo smiles again. The way this penthouse feels like a home instead of just a place I sleep. He paused. The way I feel when you're here. How do you feel? The question came out as a whisper. Like, I can breathe for the first time in years. Like, maybe there's more to life than duty and business and protecting what's mine. Like, maybe I could have something real, something good, if I was brave enough to reach for it. He lifted his hand, his fingers hovering near her face but not quite touching. What are you saying? Amara asked. I'm saying that somewhere between you feeding my daughter and refusing my money and showing up every day, even when it's hard, I've fallen for you. And I don't know what to do about it. Before Amara could respond, his phone rang. The ringtone was harsh and insistent. Dae-Jung closed his eyes in frustration. I have to take this. Business emergency? Of course. Amara stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. He answered the phone, his voice immediately shifting to cold and professional. He walked inside, already barking orders in Korean, and Amara was left on the balcony with her heart racing and her mind spinning. He'd fallen for her. Kwon Dae-Jung, dangerous crime boss, devoted father, complicated, beautiful man, had fallen for her. And oh God, she'd fallen for him too. When she left that night, he caught her hand at the door. We need to talk, soon, about this, about what you mean to me. Their faces were inches apart. Amara could feel his breath on her lips. Okay, she whispered. When we do this, when we cross this line, I want to do it right. Not rushed, not interrupted. You deserve better than stolen moments. And then he let her go, and Amara went home, aching with want and hope and fear all tangled together. The next visit, Jiwoo was waiting with a serious expression that looked far too old for her 5-year-old face. Amma, I need to ask you something important. Amara sat down, her heart already knowing where this was going. Okay, sweetheart. What is it? Will you be my my real Jiwoo's eyes were wide and hopeful. I love you, and Appa loves you, I can tell. So why can't you stay forever? The words hit Amara like a physical blow. Oh, sweetie, that's complicated. Why? When you love someone, you stay. That's what Appa always tells me. So if we all love each other, why can't you just stay? Out of the mouths of babes. Amara looked up to find Dae-Jung standing in the doorway. His expression was raw, vulnerable, like every wall he'd ever built had just crumbled. Jiwoo, he said gently, adults need time to figure things out, but why? If you love someone, you stay. Jiwoo's voice was getting louder, more insistent. It's not hard, Appa. You love Amma. Amma loves you. I love both of you. So we should all be together. That's how families work. Dae-Jung knelt down to his daughter's level. You're absolutely right. You're so smart, you know that? Can you give Amma and me a few minutes to talk? Jiwoo looked between them. Then she hugged Amara fiercely. Please stay forever, Amma, please. After Jiwoo went to her room, the silence was deafening. Dae-Jung stood slowly, his eyes never leaving. Amara's face, I didn't tell her to say that, he said quickly. I know, but she's not wrong. About how I feel? His voice was steady, certain. I'm in love with you, Amara. I've been falling for months, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Amara felt like all the air had left the room. We can't. This is too complicated. Why? He moved closer. Because of my work, my world, because we're from different cultures, all of that. Because your life is dangerous. Because people already threatened me once. Because I'm just a broke graphic designer and she gestured around the penthouse. I don't care about any of that. His intensity was overwhelming. I care about you, about the way you make my daughter laugh, about the way you see good in people even when the world is cruel, about the way you fight me on everything because you refuse to be bought or controlled. I care about you. Amara's walls were crumbling. This is insane, probably. But I'm done being sane. Done denying what I want. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the emotion in his voice. Tell me you don't feel this too. Tell me I'm alone in this and I'll back away. She couldn't. She wouldn't. I feel it, she whispered. God help me, I feel it too. I love you. I love Jiwoo. I love this whole complicated, dangerous, beautiful mess that you've dragged me into. Thank God. The words were barely out of her mouth before he was kissing her. The kiss was everything. Desperate and tender, hungry and gentle, months of tension and want and denied feelings all exploding into this moment of connection. His hands in her hair, her hands gripping his shirt, both of them holding on like the other might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dae-Jung rested his forehead against hers. I'm terrified, he admitted. Me too, but I'm more terrified of losing you, of not taking this chance, of letting fear stop me from having something real. What do we tell Jiwoo? The truth that Amma is staying. If you want to stay, I want to stay. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. I want this. You and Jiwoo and whatever crazy life comes with it. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. Then we tell her together. Jiwoo's joy when they told her was incandescent. She screamed and jumped and hugged them both, chattering rapidly in Korean about how she knew it. She knew Amma would stay. She knew they'd be a real family. That night, after Jiwoo finally fell asleep, exhausted from excitement, Dae-Jung and Amara sat together on the couch. His arm was around her shoulders, her head was resting on his chest, And for the first time in her adult life, Amara felt like she'd found where she belonged. The next 6 weeks were the happiest of Amara's life. She officially moved into the penthouse, though she kept her apartment just in case. Dae-Jung gave her the spare room next to his office and told her to do whatever she wanted with it. 3 days later, she came home from work to find the room had been transformed into an art studio. Professional easels, high-quality paints and brushes, canvases of every size, proper lighting, everything an artist could dream of. You said if money wasn't an issue, you'd paint. Dae-Jung was leaning in the doorway watching her reaction. So paint. This is too much. Amara's voice was choked with emotion. It's just supplies. This is thousands of dollars worth of supplies. And I have thousands of dollars. He pushed off the doorway and came to stand beside her. I believe in your talent, Amara. I've seen the sketches you do when you think no one's watching. You're gifted. Don't waste that. She started painting that weekend. Massive canvases about the immigrant experience, about identity and belonging in home. Dae-Jung was her biggest supporter, her first viewer. He'd come into the studio and watch her work, never interrupting, just being present. They were building a life together, blending their worlds. Amara taught Dae-Jung how to make Kenyan dishes. He taught her Korean phrases. Jiwoo thrived, happier than Amara had ever seen her, speaking 3 languages now and excelling at school. They had date nights while Jiwoo stayed with trusted guards. They had family movie nights curled up on the couch. They had mornings training together and evenings cooking together, and nights where Amara would fall asleep in Dae-Jung's arms, feeling safer than she'd ever felt. It was too perfect. Amara kept waiting for something to go wrong, and 2 months into their relationship, it did. Dae-Jung's mother arrived from Seoul unannounced. Amara was in the kitchen helping Jiwoo with homework when she heard the elevator. Dae-Jung's expression when he saw who stepped out was pure dread. What are you doing here? Madame Kwon was elegant in a way that made Amara immediately conscious of her paint-stained jeans. She wore a traditional handbag that probably cost more than a car, and her hair was styled in a perfect chignon. Her eyes swept the penthouse, taking in every detail, and when they landed on Amara, they went cold. So this is the woman you've installed in my granddaughter's life. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Mother, meet Amara Kamathi. Dae-Jung moved to stand beside Amara, a clear show of solidarity. My partner. Partner. Madame Kwon's eyebrows rose. In business, in life. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. I see. How convenient for her. Mother. The warning in Dae-Jung's voice was clear, but Madame Kwon wasn't done. She turned to Amara, her smile sharp as glass. A poor African girl landing a wealthy Korean man. Quite the upgrade for you. Amara felt anger flare, but before she could respond, Dae-Jung stepped forward. That's enough. You don't speak to her that way. I'm merely observing. Our community is talking, Dae-Jung. A black woman raising my granddaughter, dating my son. It's unseemly. It's causing seemly problems for your business relationships. I don't care what the community thinks. You should. Your partnerships depend on their goodwill. This dalliance is costing you respect. Madame Kwon's eyes were hard. End it. Now. Before you lose everything. Dinner that evening was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of Amara's life. Madame Kwon criticized everything. Amara's Korean, which she'd been learning, wasn't good enough. Her education was from a community college, not prestigious enough. Her background was too humble. Her intentions were clearly opportunistic. Jiwoo, confused and upset, finally asked, Why are you being mean to Amma, Halmione? I'm protecting our family, Jiwoo. But Amma is our family. The little girl's voice was fierce. After Jiwoo was in bed, the real fight started. Madame Kwon didn't hold back. She'd already arranged meetings with suitable Korean women. women from good families, women who understood their culture and could help expand Dae-Jung's business, connections, women who weren't an embarrassment. I'm not interested, Dae-Jung said flatly. Think of Ji-woo. She needs a proper Korean mother figure, not some African girl playing house. Amara is the best thing that's happened to Ji-woo since Haejin died, and I love her. That's the end of the discussion. Choose her and you'll lose everything. Business connections, community support, family honor. Madame Kwon's voice was ice. Is she really worth destroying everything you've built? Yes. Dae-Jung didn't hesitate. She's worth everything. Now get out of my house. Madame Kwon left, but not before a parting shot to Amara. You think you've won, but watch. Everything he's built will crumble because of you, and when it does, you'll realize you were never worth the cost. The consequences started immediately. Korean business partners pulled out of deals. Investors withdrew support. Dae-Jung's restaurants faced sudden health inspections that resulted in violations. It was systematic, brutal, designed to destroy everything he'd built. Amara watched him work 18-hour days trying to salvage his empire. Watched the stress eat at him, watched him lose weight, lose sleep, lose the peace they'd found together. And she knew it was because of her. Maybe I should leave, she suggested one night, finding him in his office at 3 in the morning, surrounded by financial reports. His response was immediate and fierce. Don't even think it. But you're losing everything because of me. I'm losing business. I'd lose everything if I lost you and Jiwoo. He took her hands. I've lived my whole life doing what was expected, marrying who I was told, running businesses I didn't choose. I was miserable. You and Jiwoo are the first real happiness I've ever known. I won't give that up. But Amara couldn't watch him suffer, couldn't be the reason his life fell apart. So she made a decision. Without telling Dae-Jung, she reached out to Madame Kwon. They met at an upscale Korean tea house. Madame Kwon looked unsurprised when Amara walked in, finally showing some sense. What will it take for you to stop attacking his businesses? Amara got straight to the point. Your absence. Madame Kwon's smile was sharp. Leave my son and I'll restore everything. I'll make him more successful than he's ever been. I have connections he doesn't. How do I know you'll keep your word? Because destroying my son's empire benefits no one. I want him successful, properly married, with a suitable stepmother for Jiwoo. You're the only obstacle. If I leave, you never contact me again. Agreed. 1 week, disappear from his life, and I'll fix everything. Amara agreed, hating herself. She went home and started planning. That night, she held Jiwoo extra long during bedtime. She made love to Dae-Jung like it was the last time, memorizing every touch, every kiss, every whispered word. Before dawn, she packed a bag, left a letter on the pillow beside Dae-Jung's sleeping form, and walked away from the two people she loved most in the world. The letter said everything she couldn't say to his face, that she loved him, that she was leaving to protect him, that Jiwoo deserved stability, not controversy, that this was killing her, but she couldn't watch him lose everything for her, that she'd carry them in her heart forever. She stayed with Zara, who hid her location and called her an idiot, and held her while she cried. Dae-Jung found the letter, called her frantically, but she didn't answer, had his people search, but Zara had hidden her well. And every day, Amara died a little more inside, wondering if she'd made the right choice. 2 weeks after she left, Yoon found her. There's an art exhibition at Seattle Art Museum. You're one of the featured artists. He should know about it. Amara had forgotten. She'd submitted her immigrant series months ago before everything, and now it was being exhibited. And she had to attend the opening reception. She almost didn't go. But these paintings were her heart, her story, and she couldn't hide forever. The exhibition was beautiful. Her canvases looked stunning on the museum walls, each one telling a story of struggle and hope and belonging. But three paintings stopped everyone who saw them. Found. An abstract representation of the night she found Jiwoo. Rain and neon, and a small figure surrounded by darkness, then enveloped in warm light. Family. Three figures, clearly Dae-Jung, Amara, and Jiwoo, intertwined with Korean and Kenyan patterns, cultures blending into something beautiful. Sacrifice. The most painful of the three. A figure walking away from light into darkness, love and loss captured in brushstrokes. Amara was standing in front of sacrifice, tears streaming down her face when she felt him. Dae-Jung's voice came from behind her. These are beautiful, the most beautiful things I've ever seen. She turned. He was there, wearing a suit, looking exhausted and heartbroken and so achingly familiar that Amara wanted to run to him. You shouldn't be here, she managed. Neither should you. You should be home. With us. He moved closer. You left without giving me a choice. I left to give you a chance. At your business, your life without me destroying it. I don't want that life. His voice rose and several people turned to look. I don't want success without you. I don't want anything without you. Your mother said, I don't care what my mother said. His eyes were blazing. Do you know what the last 2 weeks have been like? Jiwoo crying for you every night. Me unable to sleep because our bed smells like you. Trying to function when I can't even breathe without you. Dae-Jung, no, you don't get to do this. You don't get to make decisions for us without asking what we want. He took her hands. I choose you. Over my mother, over my business, over everything. It's you, Amara. It will always be you. She was crying openly now. What if it's not enough? It's enough. We're enough. He cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I've made changes, legitimizing all my businesses, cutting ties with the criminal side, building something Jiwoo can be proud of, something you can be part of without fear. And I've cut my mother out completely. You did all that. I'm doing it. Because I want a future with you. Marriage, more children, growing old together, watching Jiwoo become the amazing person I know she'll be. All of it. He dropped to one knee right there in the museum corridor. Amara Kamathi, will you marry me? Will you come home? People were staring now, but Amara didn't care. That's not a proper proposal, she said through her tears. He pulled out a ring. He'd been carrying it, hoping. Amara Kimathi, you walked into my life and showed me what love really means. You're brave and beautiful and stubborn and everything I never knew I needed. Come home, marry me, build this life with me. Yes. The word came out as a sob. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'm coming home. He stood and kissed her, right there in the museum with people applauding around them. And Amara felt like she could finally breathe again. They went home together. Jiwoo's joy when she saw Amara was worth every moment of pain. The little girl refused to let go, sleeping between them that night, holding both their hands. 6 months later, they got married in a ceremony that blended Korean and Kenyan traditions. Amara's mother flew in from Nairobi. The community was divided, but enough people supported them that it didn't matter. Madame Kwon didn't attend, though she sent a stiff apology months later when she wanted to meet their son. Because 2 years after the wedding, Amara and Dae-Jung had a baby boy, Keon, a name that honored both their cultures, and their family was complete. Jiwoo, now 9, still remembered the day Amara found her, still called it the best day of her life. Dae-Jung's businesses flourished, built on legitimate foundations. Amara's art career took off. Her paintings celebrated, her voice heard. They bought a house with space for everyone, filled it with laughter and love and the beautiful chaos of a blended family. And every day they chose each other, chose to stay, chose love over everything else, because that's what Amara learned that rainy Seattle evening when she stopped for a crying child, that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. that love grows in the most unexpected places. That family isn't about where you're from, but about who chooses to stay. And Amara, who'd given a hungry child food expecting nothing in return, had found everything. A daughter who needed her, a man who loved her, a family that proved that different didn't mean incompatible, different meant perfect. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments what moment hit you hardest. Was it the first meeting, the sacrifice, the museum proposal? I want to hear from you and subscribe for more. And stories about love that crosses every boundary, that fights for what matters, that proves family is what you make it. Drop a heart if you believe in love that chooses you every single day. See you in the next story. And remember, sometimes the best things in life start with a simple act of compassion. You never know who you might save or who might save you.